The Civil War began on April the 12th, 1861. Lincoln's earlier words of prophecy, "A house divided against itself cannot stand," proved true. Extreme conflicts between the industrial North and the agricultural South, abolitionists and slave owners, those who wished to extend the region of slavery, and those who wished to arrest its extension, these conflicts and many more raced past the point of reason, and Americans fought Americans. Many Northerners felt that the war would soon be over. They were sure that the Northern troops would quickly overcome the Army of the South. Northern soldiers marched to war full of confidence. However, the armies of the Confederacy fought relentlessly, and Northern armies suffered several crucial defeats. By the summer of 1862, the Union was in dire need of added manpower to put down the rebellion of the South. Midsummer 1862, here are the words of Lincoln. Things had gone from bad to worse until I felt we had reached the end of our rope on the plan of operation we had been pursuing, that we had about played our last card and must change our tactics or lose the game. I now determined upon the adoption of the emancipation policy. In September of 1862, Lincoln informed the South that he would issue a proclamation which would free all slaves found in areas which were in rebellion against the United States. The proclamation was to be rendered on January 1st, 1863. On January 1st of 1863, the day of promise arrived. And then, Lincoln's proclamation. That on the first day of January, in the year of our Lord 1863, all persons held as slaves within any state or designated part of a state, the people whereof shall then be in rebellion against the United States, shall be then, thenceforward, and forever free. Negroes and whites sympathetic to the anti-slavery cause rejoiced throughout the land. It was a day of jubilee. But there was still a war going on. A part of Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation appealed to Negroes to join the Union forces. For the first time since the beginning of the Civil War, Negroes were allowed to legally participate with the Northern Army. A number of Negroes had been fighting with the Confederate forces since the beginning of the war.
We listen to the words of Lincoln, and we listen to the words of Frederick Douglass.
Go quickly and help fill up the 1st Regiment of the North. Let us win for ourselves the gratitude of our country and the best blessings of our posterity through all time.
We joined the Union forces, and we fought, and we died.
Over 100,000 Negroes fought with the Union Army in such celebrated battles as Milliken's Bend, the Battle of Petersburg, the Second Battle of Bull Run, the Battle of Chapin's Farm, and many others. They fought valiantly. 21 Negro soldiers and sailors won the Congressional Medal of Honor for their bravery during the Civil War. And Harriet Tubman distinguished herself as a scout and nurse for the Union Army, and was later awarded a lifetime pension for her courageous work. And then, the war was finally over. 1865. The nation picked itself up and slowly tried to piece America back together by licking its wounds and trying to forget the bloody 4-year war. As America began its reconstruction, the ex-slave, now a freedman in a land of peace, looked around and tried to find his place in society. He listened to the words of Thaddeus Stevens, United States Congressman and friend of the freedmen.
Gentlemen, we speak of the problems of the freedmen. I say, give the freedman 40 acres and a mule. These are the types of solutions that we have to reach in the
He
world
listened
today.
and thought that this would be a good idea now that he was free and on his own. For the most part, uneducated and unskilled, he found it difficult to be a contributing part of American life. In time, he received assistance from several sources.
Education was one of the most effective means of aiding the freedmen. Missionary teachers began their constructive educational work with Negroes in the South even before the war was over. The Freedmen's Bureau, established in 1865, proved to be a most significant organization. Not only did it establish day schools, night schools, and industrial schools, but it also established hospitals for Negroes and poverty-stricken whites, and also gave them rations. Many other religious and civic organizations did much to educate the Negro in basic and higher learning. Education was the key that opened many doors for the freedmen. Soon many educational institutions, such as Shaw, Morehouse, Morgan, Clark, Lincoln, Fisk, Talladega, Howard, and others appeared and grew.
I, Charles Sumner, Senator of Massachusetts, say, give the freedman a ballot and treat him like a man.
And for a while, the freedman was given the ballot and participated in politics. Negroes such as B.K. Bruce, James Lewis, and Hiram Revels were elected to the United States Senate.
Many Negroes, including the brilliant Robert Brown Elliott and Robert Smalls, were elected to the House of Representatives in Washington.
Negroes were elected to the constitutional conventions, state legislatures, and other public offices. The durable politician P.B.S. Pinchback was elected as lieutenant governor and even served for a short time as acting governor of Louisiana. Many of these Negroes who held public office were well educated and devoted their talents to performing creative services for their state governments.
Booker, honey, I know you want to get all the education that you can, but that school in Virginia is so far away.
Yes, it was a long way from Malden, West Virginia to Hampton, Virginia. But young Booker T. Washington hungered for learning. The kind of learning that a school such as Hampton Institute could give an ambitious young colored boy born during the last years of slavery. And so at the age of 15, Booker T. Washington set out over the mountains to reach his chosen goal, Hampton Institute, some 500 miles away. After graduating from Hampton with honors in 1875, Booker Taliaferro Washington, imbued with the idea that he could best contribute to his country and his people through teaching, began a long and illustrious career as an educator. In 1881, he created an institution of higher learning which still stands as a living memorial to his greatness, Tuskegee Institute in Tuskegee, Alabama. Later, he became an important diplomat and a spokesman for his people.
Cast down your bucket where you are. Cast it down in making friends in every manly way of the people of all races by whom we are surrounded. Cast it down in agriculture, mechanics, in commerce, in domestic service, and the professions.
While Booker T. Washington was busily engaged in building Tuskegee Institute, a tall, thin Negro was finishing his graduate work for a master's degree at Iowa State College. This man, George Washington Carver would soon contribute his genius to Tuskegee and to United States agriculture as well.
When I was invited by Booker T. Washington to join his staff as a teacher and director of agricultural research, I was intrigued by the problems of this growing school. I went to Tuskegee to help my people and remained there all my life.
While at Tuskegee, George Washington Carver lowered his experimental bucket in the Alabama soil and extracted wondrous things. His work with the peanut and sweet potato yielded unheard of products, such as ink, cooking oils, peanut butter, metal polish, rope, rubber compounds, starch, and many, many more commodities that could economically be used by man. In 1953, the United States government purchased the farm where George Washington Carver was born and dedicated it as a shrine to his lasting memory. A fitting tribute to a man who rose from slavery to a great scientist.
Go away and quit that noise, Miss Lucy. Put that music book away. What's the use to keep on trying? You can't start no note supplying if you practice till you're great. Like the ones that rants and rings from the kitchen to the big woods when Melindy sings.
This poem, When Melindy Sings, was written by Paul Laurence Dunbar, who was sometimes called the Robert Burns of Negro poetry. For like the poet Burns, Dunbar sometimes tried to capture the soul of his people through dialect. Born in Dayton, Ohio in 1872, Dunbar began to write poetry at an early age. By the turn of the 20th century, he had become an internationally known writer of poetry, books, and plays. He received worldwide acclaim for his contributions to American literature. The first 20 years of the 20th century found the American Negro making significant contributions to his country and himself.
1905, a group of Negro intellectuals, led by W.E.B. Du Bois and William Monroe Trotter, organized the Niagara Movement, which was a forerunner of many Negro interest groups.
1909, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People was founded. It was also the year that Matthew Henson, a Negro, and Admiral Robert Peary became the first men to reach the North Pole.
1910, the National Urban League was organized in New York City.
1913, in commemoration of the 50th anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation, the gifted poet James Weldon Johnson wrote, "Just 50 years, a winter's day, as runs the history of a race. Yet, as we now look o'er the way, how distant seems our starting place."
Following the First World War, in which several all-Negro regiments were awarded the Croix de Guerre, creativity appeared everywhere. Jazz came into full flower following the pattern set by the immortal W.C. Handy. The poets County Cullen, Claude McKay, and Langston Hughes voiced the sorrows, hopes, and aspirations of the Negro people. A. Philip Randolph formed the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. And as the years rushed by, America grew, and so did the Negro. Burt Williams, Florence Mills, Ethel Waters, and Bill Bojangles Robinson became idols of the stage. Marian Anderson, Paul Robeson, and Roland Hayes thrilled audiences around the world and were considered to be among the finest of America's artists. Jesse Owens led America to victory in the Olympic Games. A young fighter named Joe Louis became a symbol of American strength. Robert S. Abbott and Robert L. Vann were recognized as leaders in the newspaper publishing field. Mary McLeod Bethune became an advisor to President Roosevelt. And when the Second World War occurred, Dr. Charles Drew pioneered in the development of blood plasma. An Air Force pilot named Benjamin Davis, Jr. led an all-Negro fighter squadron to paths of glory. And Negroes were found in every branch of military service and took part in practically every major campaign.
And when the war was over, America returned once more to peaceful living and progress.
A former Army lieutenant named Jackie Robinson made history by becoming the first Negro in Major League Baseball. And what a player he was.
And let us not forget an American whose contributions to his country and the world have earned for him the greatest respect of all his fellow men, Dr. Ralph Bunche. This talented, tireless advocate of world peace received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1950 for his diplomatic efforts in negotiating an armistice between the Arabs and the Jews in troubled Palestine. Truly a great American and a great humanitarian.
Yes, the Negro has contributed much to the United States of America in the exploration of uncharted land, in military valor, in the arts, in sports, in business, in industry, in education, and in all the other areas of endeavor that have made our country what it is today.